ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my stream. Happy days. Alright, this is a new game for my channel. I'm loving this game. Up to 88, say 88 on that game, but we're gonna start a new world. Get this ball going. This is oxygen not included. It's a very interesting game. Early access, as you can see, development build. Really great. I'm gonna play around, have some fun. Alright, so getting started. Gotta pick my starting characters here. Alright. So. I'll take it up. Alright, that's good. Okie dokie. Now, all I need to do. Okay, anyways, yes. Let's get this character set up. Ooh, you're pretty decent early bird, small bladders, your pee a bit more, but I can deal with that. More health, shoulder, no. 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 Scaredy cat, you won't combat. I can deal with that. And research. I'll take that. Alright, so those are the 3 duplicates that I am taking with me today. And here we go. Oh, already, right away. Some stuff right there for me to pick up. Alright. Let's get digging. Alright. So that's carbon dioxide. Easily flush that out.
Zack and Pop switched channel to streaming channel on the server. Trimble switched channel to streaming channel on the server.
Let's dig that out there. Like that. And let it get itself oxygenated. But I will order dig on those. Get rid of them. Hey guys. Alright. Man, I forgot how sensitive this is. Alright, so we're just gonna go like that. And there we go. Like that. Alright. Getting new stuff now. We need to... This thing should be these things.
Doobie switched channel to general discussion on the server.
Pop those there. And then we can... That's what I'm looking for. One there. One there. One there, like that. So... We should dig out. And put our flooring down. A hatch popped out the ceiling there. Alright, I'm try to set those up. Alright, cancel that one. No. Like that. I know I'm gonna go at least that far. All of that. Alright. Now, where? Why can't I see mine? Make sure this is actually working. Yes, it is. Alright, so it's going on. For some reason I can't get to it. My app, which is no fun. I wish I could go to my thing because I need to get to the chat. I can read it. People want to talk to me, man. How do I know? Alright, anyways. Just letting them go on there. They're building away. Okay, now I should just get that popped. Algae there. Good algae down there. Actually, before the end of the cycle, that's swept up. Please. Don't actually have any. Yeah, like that. I'll throw our outhouse down here. Which will have its dedicated storage compactor. Ah, dedicated storage compactor. There you go. Alright. Let's see if I can try and get to the dang chat here. No, and they've changed it so much. Boo. Alrighty, well, they're still just going. I just want them to clean this up, because if they don't, it's kind of a negative when they go to bed. Like someone already poisoned the water hole, so to speak. Alright, 1% stress already. Which is okay, it's decent as long as we can clean it up and it doesn't get too gassy. Look, we're already back down to 0. Now it's bedtime. The hatch comes out, so there's a hatch down here we'll have to keep an eye on. Another hatch there. see right now. Do I even see? Oh, there's a little bit of slime and algae. So I'll be coming up and through here, I guess. Yeah. So I'll be chasing that algae. This will generate a bit of oxygen for now to help us pressurize and stuff, which is doing pretty well. This will act as a nice carbon dioxide dump as well. Nope, that's not. Oh, okay, well, I'll have to get to chat a different way, I guess. And looks like it's daytime for cycle 2. Alright, so cycle 2 is up. Let's mop this, guys. Okay. Let's mop this now. Oh, we got some oxalite there that's contributing to our oxygen flow, and then I'm going to prioritize this whole lot. Oh, there's meat in the ration. Interesting. Okay, well, we'll start producing food and stuff soon. Alright, back to work. Let's get stuff built. Where are you guys going? Are you still doing a little bit of sweeping? Alright, so now they're gonna dig down. Oh, I popped that. There we go. Started 12 minutes ago and it only just let me into the chat. Alright, so that's popping up. Cool, alright, live chat, there we go. Awesome, awesome. Alright, so got the live chat working. Anyone wants to leave a message, please do. Just remember there is at least a minute delay. So if you do ask a question, give it some time. Just give it time. Oops. Not do that. Yeah, okay, there we go. Alright. We got quite a bit of algae up there too, that's nice. Got a decent amount of algae to start with. Yeah, I'll build you there. I'm gonna build you there. some decent supply of power. And then that's gonna have to come down into here. Like that. Also gonna throw a couple of lamps in here to help brighten the place up. As well as a couple of flower vases to also help brighten the place. Increase the decor value for our duplicates. Another cycle to go before we get a new one. Alright. This is up to 4%. Kind of scattered around. Stepping in polluted water isn't helping. You hope stepping in polluted water is deeper expectation. Apparently they're not meeting their deeper expectation. It's weird. That's okay, we'll deal with that right away. Oh yes. And I don't have any seeds right now to plant into there. There's a couple here. That's not a usual. Ah, come on. Keep this clean, guys. Come on. All but polluted dirt, please. I can polluted dirt. Nice. Okay. So anything that doesn't have when you select all now doesn't just get added on. Oh, and that's caved in. I need to dig that out too. Then we'll get another sweep going through here. Just to clean the place up. That in there and one in there. Get this sweep on. Is this thing actually slightly watermarked? Yes, it is. That's interesting. Why is that slightly transparent? Ah, that's why. Interesting though. Get a little bit of a watermark there, but definitely not what we're interested in. Alright, so they're just finishing up around here now. This is still generating a nice amount of oxygen, so I don't have to worry about getting this online right away. But you I'm gonna want to keep open. I know how much algae I have. Which right now isn't much. I definitely need to tap into this vein. Oh, it's bedtime now. So, time for sleep on day 2 here. Oh, Ren is off to the bathroom now. But yeah, day 2 right now. Just finished. Getting there. Let's take a look. Yeah. Quite a bit of things. We still got 20,000 kilocalories. 28,000. But what that says there, there's a few laying around. But basically, I think we need to get a farm started down here. Okay, I can't. Then the real first thing I need to get going is a research station. Which I guess I will build right there. For when we take that side out. Boop, like that, and then what I'll do is load up this half is actually let's load this half up is 7. So I'll get done first. This is 6, so it gets done next. That's our focus for today. Oh, really quite a bit of algae here. A decent amount of water too, that'll last us for a while. Yeah, you can. You're standing on something that's gonna get built, you're gonna fall. Briar. Like there. That'll be, that's the floor. 1, 2, 3, 4. Nice. Nom nom nom. Listen to those chewing. Yeah. Alright. Got a couple of vacuums here. Decent amount of oxygen, but there's a bunch of algae. We've got a bit of algae down here too. Some fresh water. Quite a bit of fresh water actually. There's a snow section now. There's polluted water with slime and clay. Algae. Ooh, a thimbleweed. Yeah, that's some polluted water up there too. Alright, well that's okay. We can live with that. I'm sure. I'll try anyways. Alright, got a little manual generator built there. Getting the rest of them done now. Now this still needs to be charged with algae before it can start producing oxygen at a very greedy rate of oops. Let's see, 600 grams for a second for 1,000 grams. The 6/10 conversion from algae to oxygen. I gotta stress this back down to 0%, so that's very nice. Check that decor. Really, oh, pretty decent. What can I get rid of? Oh, they're all like plus 20, so yeah, it's fine. It's just not really showing as green. And we'll be getting, oh, right away actually, a new duplicate to the posse. I'll queue up for another bed. Just like that.
RSSU joined the server. RSSU switched channel to stake out Alex on the server.
And I'll just clean that up. Picking up quite a bit of algae now. Another few 100 grams there. Running very low on oxalate there. Stabilizing quite nicely. Do love the art style of this game. It's very beautiful. And that sound means we gotta choose a new duplicate, so let's choose. We got these three to choose from. Definitely don't want that super. Oh, but I don't really want an narcoleptic either. Stinky, I believe. It's gonna be you today. Alright, duplicate number 4 in the house. Oh, and we've got power too, that is freaking sweet! Tile. Like that. Alright, Ren. Now, I really have to manage my... right there. Where we go next? Good luck, Stinky. Alright, so... now we're doing all 3/4 of the way cycle 4. Just deposited the materials for that, that's all. Alright, well, that's okay. We don't need them building anything more yet. We should prioritize this stuff. Oops, look at you here. I do get another fire root out of it. Fire seed, I mean. Alright, good job, guys. Trying to get that bed in before sleep. And they got the tile as well, that's good. Just need that bed, come on guys. There it is, boom. We got 4 beds. That's still entombed, that's okay. And, oh, we're clearing that up, thank you. Pop! Alright, so. There we go, bedtime day 3. Let's see, gained power, we wasted a lot of power. And didn't generate much oxygen.
RSSU switched channel to streaming channel on the server.
And there goes the last of that oxalite, so definitely gonna be relying on that oxygen generation now. Gonna get a little bit back out of this. Ooh, that's nice. Nice amount there.
RSSU switched channel to stake out Alex on the server.
That's okay. Oh, the bright seed went in there now, too. That's gonna bump up that decor, 26 for 86. We've got nice. Oh, this isn't too beautiful, but that's because they need to do a nice level 4 sweep along here. There's a nice level 4 sweep along here, too. Alright, get to work, children! Alright, so we're just taking our way down here. Kind of making a little bit of a carbon dioxide trap is my plan. Putting our briar seeds in. Digging down, just kind of miscellaneous tasks. Whew, speaking is my favorite. I don't want to get over busy right now. I don't want to start struggling though. I'll keep a decent amount of man, no research tasking. Let's start with farming.
Malek switched channel to Bunos Food Shack on the server.
Yeah, we'll start with farming, get that food. I think that's what I'm gonna make here. Is gonna be a nice. Oh, there we go. We've tapped into there. So the carbon dioxide is gonna filter its way in. Oxygen will get pushed up. So that should probably help that. Yeah. 27
Quicker was
carbon.
Malek switched channel to stake out Alex on the server.
Alright.
Malek switched channel to Bunos Food Shack on the server.
Granite down there. Actually harvest that too. No, it's a little bit of food right there. Quarter the way done. Cycle 4. Just think he has 2%.
Giant with Malek switched channel to stake out Alex on the server.
Because of his deco expectation. An expectation of 0. He'll be fine. He'll pass away when he sleeps. It's just gonna rise slightly around here. Because it's not exactly the cleanest. It takes a bit for us to... Alright, now they're doing a nice little sweep, that's good. Got no seat selected, just Ren's jumping on there to charge up the device. I guess we'll select that too, so we'll also get that research started now. Oh wait, that needs... Oh, that's just dirt, that's fine. But I need water. I don't want to tap into the water until I need it. Run the risk of run into the... Yeah, that debris is like really... Level 7 suit there. We're about halfway through the day now. Cancel across there. Sweep level 7. Make it nice and high. There you go. Yeah, that looks like... Oh, that's just the back of the... Yeah, it's the back of the lamp I'm trying to click there. Alright, and I should check my thermal. Everything's heading good.
RS Malak switched channel to Buenos Boot
A
Shack on the
little
server.
warm here, but it's still cool enough. It's strangely warmish down here.
McClendon joined the server.
Don't know what that's about, but how much do we have? 2 cycles, so we're halfway through day
Message
4
received.
now. Trying to get the farming going, really.
RSSE was Malak switched channel to stake out Alex on the server.
Units that to get through. Just keeping my oxygen up. Great bubble here, but this carbon dioxide still just slowly filtering down. Ren got a skill increase on athletics, so he's gonna move around faster now, which is nice. Oh, narcolepsy snuck itself in there. There we go. They're also cleaning that corner up now. Look at that, that's beautiful. That debris really adds to the negative value. Like, most of that negative right there is just the debris.
Crunch switched channel to lobby on the server.
So keeping a nice clean ant farm is always a great thing. Actually, it's kind of seeping its way through. Slowly. This is kind of pointless. Let's actually deconstruct you there. Put you up here for now. Like that. Basically, my hope for that is it just will push. Where's that? We can deconstruct that too. We don't need the one sticking out the floor. Alright, they're delivering dirt to the research station. It is continuing to produce dreams. Auto is at 1%. Auto, you are probably decorable. Yeah, drop decor. Because there is a shit ton of stuff just sitting around here. Oh, poor man. Alright. Yeah, that carbon dioxide is really just kind of piling itself up here. It's filtering down. We do have a bit of a bubble, so I am going to pop these up at a level. We can get them done. It's almost the end of cycle 4. There you go, that's the wire. Now it's building the algae deoxidizer. Hopefully it'll generate quite a bit more oxygen now. Because this is going to run out first. It's going to drain basically like that. So if I just basically generate it on the top, it can fill it from it bottom up. This needs the algae in order to function. 100 kilograms right there. Keep it nice and stocked. And yeah, it's producing oxygen. Cycle 4 is almost over those, so there it is. Cycle 4 report is ready. still not generating food right now, but we still got quite a bit. We're eating. I only need about 4,000 a day, so 4, 8, 10. 4, 8, 10? Yes. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. So it's about 6 days worth of food. Less because, well, we got another duplicate in the day and a half. But yeah, look at that. We've already generated oxygen. We can sufficiently generate more oxygen than we're using right now, so I think we're good with this. Just this one algae deoxidizer for now. We'll see how the day goes. But cycle 5 is going to be starting soon. Like they've got a nice rested sleep. Everyone is down to 0% stress, which is beautiful. I think it does have light wounds, so we'll have to schedule some people some medical cot time. And the only other thing is keeping temperature okay. It's generating a little bit of heat, but I think it's low atmospheric pressure, 150 grams. Oh, there's less than 150 grams of oxygen down there. That's okay. Like I say, it starts here and then it will filter down.
McClendon disconnected from the server.
Yeah, as you can see, it's slowly filtering its way down. That's okay. We're still generating plenty of oxygen from that one deoxidizer, which is nice. So we'll just let it work, let it run, build up its levels. And of course, after we introduce the next duplicate, we will ensure that they're still doing fine.
Crunch was moved to channel general discussion.
But yeah, I just love this. Look, the oxygen, carbon dioxide, and you see like all the other types of gases around, you know, water, liquid. Oh, a puffed. Nice. Interesting. But what they do is they'll suck up contaminated oxygen, which looks like they've already done all here, and they poop out slime. So, which is great if you're mining slime, because if the slime is out, like in here it's in the water, so it's not kicking out any contaminated oxygen, but it's like the oxalate. If it's if there's open space, it will start emitting, and it will emit contaminated oxygen. So what's nice is if they get into your base, you got a nice little slime thing like here, which is probably where I'll start mining now. And so I can get the slime. He will basically suck up all the contaminated oxygen, turn it back to slime, so I'm not wasting any. And then we can compress the slime into algae at the very, very inefficient rates of the algae things. We're producing a lot of oxygen, more than we're using. This top room is really gonna fill up with the oxygen right away. 8 more research points to go. As you can see, we've already gone for a few hundred units of that algae there, though. That's sandstone. Just trying to plan my stuff here. I'm just gonna. Don't like any of that. No, cancel. This is basically gonna be my well for a while. There we go. Oxygen's piling up. It'll hopefully push the carbon dioxide down a bit more. Not sure why. It's not. Okay, looks fine for now at least. Alright, over halfway through cycle 5 now. Just one more cycle for a new duplicant. Ooh, another drink. That's no fun. But it was doing okay. Definitely gonna have to start planning about an algae climb. Alright, oh, those are all full. Oh, I did not notice that until just now. Alright, honestly. Just dig this all out. Or I'll cross that like that. Nice, beautiful. Beautiful! Yeah, alright. And also because oh, hello. Ah, we just got farming. That's great to have. Now let's see. Gas pumping, no. Liquid pumping, not right now. Regulation, no. Those are nice. Alright, so I guess we'll start with that then. For now. Alright, but anyways, we're still just rocking along here. We're gonna rock on there. Basically the last orders I'll issue for today. Got a plunger that looks like an upside down. I was gonna say an upside down thing. Yes, that looks like an upside down thing. No, I meant to say that looks like a beaker type thing. Yeah. Doesn't look like a plunger, that's for sure. Come on, hurry up. Very slow. Apparently someone just pooped. Oh no, that's just alright. Almost up there. Think he just increased his athletics to level 2. Running around. Alright, so. Hey. What else we got? Oh, we got a little bit of slime and stuff that way too. I'll dig out all this algae. I'll have to start working on slime. Just a little annoying. And it's bedtime here on day 5. Let's check the report. We gained 154.7 kilograms of oxygen. We generated a surplus of 58.4 kilojoules of power, but we wasted 830. How power waste? I don't get. That was not used or stored in a battery. Why? Weird. I don't know. Do I have a problem with my circuit or something? Because that usually never happens. I don't know. Oh well, that's fine. Oh, we're actually losing. You have no algae. Ran out of its algae overnight. We split it before bed. But level 6, another 4 there. Because there will be a floor lamp and a cot. And I better make sure that is, yep. Alright. For the new guy, new person, new duplicant, once we get them. Once they've been acquired. Ah, yes, I should also be doing this. And the terrarium. For the algae, a second. 40 grams. I'll take one. And we'll plop it. Right there. And one right there. That will get that light boost. Give this one a light boost here. Honestly, that's more for the carbon dioxide depletion than the oxygen generation. Alright, saying insufficient oxygen generation, just barely. That's just due to this carbon dioxide clogging the place up. So what is it again anyways? Boom, boom, boom. So 30 grams of algae and 300 grams of water every second to get 40 grams of oxygen. And it subtracts 333.3 micrograms of carbon dioxide. Ooh, barely any. But it gains more oxygen than we use algae. Interesting. I'm okay with that. Ah, that's where I need to access my water. So Oop. There you go. If I put those in by one. Oops. Alright. There we go. That'll give me access to that water, give me a little bit extra algae. I am seriously running pretty low. There's a lot of oxygen up here. Do some not down here. Oh, it's definitely gonna. This is basically just trying to stop people peeing over the dang thing. Oh boy. Alright, so. Polluted dirt is a high priority, please. Gotta put that poop away. So nice to get this too. Oh. Wow. I did not remember everything, did I? We have duplicate number 5 ready to come in now. We're gonna take Bert. Welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Alright, and then we also need to plant these beautiful things as soon as we can. Hold you up as well. Alright. Fertilizer. Okay, so I gotta make fertilizer. From the contaminated dirt. I'll store it in this storage, dedicated storage compactor right there. Yeah, we're doing fine for oxygen. As long as it's down here, we know we're okay. Yeah, we need that water for the algae. Let's leave it right there for now. We'll make 7, 6, and 5. So we are out of algae, so it's okay. This will grab us some. See how fast that algae can burn away? Also, put a level 4 sweep down there just to clean up that decor over here. Alright, Bert, how's it going? +2 stress. Gives you decor. Back to 5, you're sleeping in a pretty bad area right now. That's right, we got the sweep. Got a good day's work ahead of us though. 2.5 cycles. So we're just starting cycle 7 today. Alright, so there's our fertilizer and compost heap going in right away. We'll take our nice contaminated dirt here, 99 kilograms that we have. Sorry. How's that temperature really looking nice? Thermal comfort is still looking pretty good. There we go. Make sure that gets done. Alright, so there's the compost. Getting flipped there. Can't remember what that comes under. I think it's filtration medium though. No, it's under organic. Alright. You restore fertilizer. Alright, so there we go. And now they're working on our little well, tapping into our water source. And also that little algae source. Yeah, oh, there's quite a bit of that oxygen. Do use a lot of oxygen, so it's pretty important that we get our oxygen production flowing there. Think you leveled up construction to level 1. Awesome. Plenty of sand. We'll be stocking up on sand before we start using it for water filtration in the works. Oh, blossom seeds left. That's okay. We've got fertilizer coming out now. Ruby's off to the washroom. Just 3 more units of research to go. And we're almost down in our... And we're gonna pop through there. Drop a whole bunch of stuff. Oh, there's our water. Let's use priority 9 so you can get recharged and... Yeah, oh, maybe not because all that algae fell down there, didn't it? Yep. Okay, well... Alright, they're loading that up with all algae. Algae? My gosh, I promise I know English. Still plenty of oxygen up here, but yeah. Starting to eat into that now. Ooh. Research complete on the liquid plumbing. Let's go for that gas permeable tile there. That'll definitely help us out. Alright, algae terrariums also helping eat up some of this carbon dioxide we got going on here. Alrighty, 3/4 of the way through cycle 7 here. Just over 2 cycles to go, or just under 2 cycles to go. Details, no. No idea. Oh well, here we go. Fertilization's on 16, 17. It's 32. Okay. We're just eating up their fertilizer. It's all good. Hmm. And Narco sleeps stinky passing out up there.
Quaker was moved to channel Buenos B. Malek switched channel to Buenos Boot Shack on the server.
Bedtime on cycle 7 here. Time for these little duplicates to go to bed and relax for the night. Alright. There's quite a bit of fertilizer in it.
B. Giant was moved to channel. Quaker was moved. Malek switched channel to stake out Alex on the server.
That's what hatches do. They'll just eat resources. Not sure what it ate. But it ate some of that mill lice. But now we have liquid piping, which I won't be using until I really need to. Now see that biodistiller converts slime into algae. It uses 300 grams of slime for 100 grams a second of algae, so that's 1/3. Now this takes 600 grams a second, so I need 6 of these to basically produce enough slime for just one of these. Yeah, not great. I'm sorry to a lot of polluted water though. What I might do is then add in an electrolyzer with a hydrogen power plant, and the hydrogen that comes out of that electrolyzer can be burnt for some spare energy. That's basically what I'm looking at right now. That's my plan anyways. Someone got a skill up. Bert is now at learning level 1. We have 3 days worth of food left now. 9 days until food. That isn't good. I should go for 5 cycles, even that wouldn't be fast enough. Initial growth is 10 cycles, with 2 cycles after that. Oh boy. It takes sorry. First blossom 10. Video short one is 5 harvests. 10, 12, 14, 16, 17, 18 cycles for 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Yeah. So 18 cycles pumps out 10 kilocalories, which is basically 10 days worth of food for one duplicate every 18 days. So few more. That's what, 10, 20, 30, 40 every 18 days. Let's do some math here. If we are using, how many are we, see, that's 18 days right now. Oops. 18 days we're using 5,000 kilocalories. That's 90,000 kilocalories in 18 days. And right now I'm only making, what, 40,000? So I still need another 5 plants. Wow. That's not looking good. That's a good amount of algae though. Quite happy with that for now. I will eventually want to look at that stuff we dropped down there. Still got a bit here I can mine out for the future. Oxygen is doing very well, generating lots of surplus. Alrighty, sorry about that. Got a phone call from work, which is weird because I usually done by now. Anyway, back to work. That's nice special. Awesome, actually growing slightly there. But because it's wild, it grows slightly slower. Yeah, see, that's 50%, but it's still going to take another 20 days. So that's not going to help us. A little bit of mucky stuff. Ooh. Can't really water here, that stinky's gonna get followed by. Alright, come on, let's clean up fast, fast, fast. Good children, alright. You guys don't really have any tasks right now. We're working on research, which we're almost done. Still producing a lot of surplus oxygen, so that's fine. We've got idols now, so okay. that biodistiller though. Water purifier. Scrubber, electrolyzer. Liquid purifier. No, liquid filter. That's what the others biodistiller. Okay. Hmm. That's the research complete. Yeah, advanced filtration comes first. There's a supercomputer which will pop up here. Alright, so that's cycle 8 complete. There you go. Generated extra oxygen. Still got a few more days worth of food. Crystal blossoms growing nicely. Still 8.5 cycles to go before they are complete. So this is going to be interesting, that's for sure. Cycle 9 has begun here. Still a little low here. I wish oxygen was coming down a little bit better, but that's not too bad for now. In fact, actually, what I'm going to do here, I'm going to become gas permeable. I'll pop it this way. There you go. And that should just help the oxygen a little bit better into this area. Hopefully fill it up a bit better. It looks like I'm maxing out a little bit. There we go.
Quaker was moved to channel Buenos Buj. Malek switched channel to Buenos Buj Shack on the server. RSSU switched channel to Buenos Buj Shack on the server. RSSU was moved to channel Stay Out Alex. Zeka switched channel to Buenos Buj Shack on the server. Zelkit was moved to channel Stay Out Alex.
Alright, so... Ooh, also, we got a new duplicant today. Ooh. Alright. Get this. Get that here. Land. And away. Alright, so there we go. Ah, of course those. Bring the wire down. You're not getting the light bonus on it. That's getting the light bonus. Done. 50,000. We found with the fertilizer there. Alright.
Malak switched channel to stay out Alex on the server. Malak switched channel to streaming channel on the server.
Yeah, this is just not really coming down here too much, eh? I'm gonna have to put a little oxygen generator in the corner there. Still producing more than I'm using, so it should be in a pretty decent climb. We'll see how it goes. Intermediate research using water. Just getting that core up. Very helpful for them.
Malak switched channel to stay out Alex on the server.
New duplicate number 6 is ready. Can't build, but you have it constructed. It's pointless. So take Marie. Welcome to the hip dreamland. Thanks for joining us. Alright, so I think he passed out right there. Let's pop a few more of these storage compactors in. Already halfway through the novice research there. This one warms up pretty fast. A little disappointing. Waiting for our food supplies there. 52%, still 8 cycles to go. This is up on 7% on auto, 4% on Marie. Grab at the core So auto. Expectation is -5. I will be doing okay. He's got her caught now. He's got 4. Due to the core expectation, again, -5 is the expectation, but alright, so those are sets. They should keep things up properly now. There we go, just like that. Oh yeah, we're getting oxygen now, that's great. It's basically a nice cleanup now. That's the end of cycle 9. We generated 34.6 kilograms of oxygen. And we also generated a surplus of 58.8 kilojoules of energy, and we wasted 1 kilojoule of power too somehow. Generated no food yesterday, used up 5,030 kilocalories. Gives us with only 2 days. Sublimation, what's that? Amount of thing. We generated 1.41 grams, so just over a kilogram of polluted oxygen generated yesterday. That's nice. Alright, our little children sleeping away here. Sleeping is actually giving them a nice boost there. Where's -11 there? And 33 of that is just the debris. And like I say, it really shows how much your dose of that debris can really affect the mood of your duplicants. So keeping the Aryans nice and clean. Oh, Marie just got a skill increase to level 1 in running. You run just that little bit faster there, girl. Alright. As we deliver algae. And I'm guessing water as well. Yeah, that needs water, and that needs some water, so... Alright. This one doesn't cool down too well. Delivering some water there too. Very nice. I wonder if... Oh, they're getting cold. Yeah, because they're standing in the water, of course. Silly people. Just find another way. Body temperature instead of warming up. Yeah, we're fine. Ooh, toasty surroundings. Environment's warming up slightly. Probably by that, eh? It's not great. It's causing them to stop growing. Oh boy. That's not too bad, I guess. I sure do not too bad. What can I do? Not really anything right now. Well, Novice is unable to research because it's already pretty much done everything for this. Like, kinda sucks that you can't just keep making those extra points, but okay. I'll be okay, I'm sure. Alright. Look at the supercomputer still just generating that on itself. Yeah. The computer's getting it all increased. Up there, whew. It'll be the little bit of warming up there. Running out of oxygen up here? Oh, you got a little bit of a carbon dioxide bubble there, don't you? Don't know how to deal with that, to be honest. When I'm putting oxygen there and getting it to push it out. Um, hmm. You there. I'll do that. We'll try that. Really starting to warm up down here. We really don't want that. We're running low on food. So we really need to get that food production going, but if they're starving themselves, and low atmospheric pressure too. Running low on that algae again. You should probably see the carbon dioxide get pushed into here, I'd say. Oh, we'll see how it goes. Give it a few cycles. Speaking of cycles, we're almost done cycle 10 here. Alright, there we go. That's cycle 10. So, that's oxygen not included. Pretty awesome game so far. I think I'm gonna need to start looking for more algae. I need to deal with a production facility too. Because not only is getting enough biodistillers running, it's also getting a good supply of slime coming in. But that is everything from me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. It's been great. And yeah, that's pretty much 2 hours worth of oxygen not included right there. Thanks very much for watching. We'll catch you again another time.